Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. Today, I'm going to talk about rediscovering you, and this is actually part four. So, if you have not had an opportunity to view the other tapings, I encourage you to do those first. Although these sessions aren't quite cumulative, it just kind of makes sense to view the other ones first because today's session, I think, makes more sense in the context of what we've already discussed. So, just go ahead and view those first and come back to this one. Anyway, I wanted to say happy Thanksgiving to you. I had the best time in Buffalo, New York, visiting my family and also visiting my husband's family, who's from Lackawanna, New York. And didn't want to come home really, kind of had that sad feeling about coming back to Maryland, but just had a good time overall and had a wonderful opportunity to minister at my dad's church on Sunday. We talked about peace, and he is the pastor of two churches in the area. One is in Lockport, New York. It's the Latter Rain Cathedral at Lockport, and he's also the pastor of the Latter Rain Cathedral in Buffalo, New York. So if you're ever in that area, I encourage you to visit his church. He's Pastor Donald Chisholm. Please visit him and let him know that I sent you. Anyway, I want to talk again about rediscovering you and embracing the real you. Now, if you have viewed the other tapings like I asked you to do, you will see that one of the first tapes, it might have been part one, we talked about the irrelevant self that you built over time, the self that you have become now because you have an idea of what people like, or you have built this self that is esteemed, that people love, whatever it is. We, over time, based on our experiences in life, make up this you that really isn't who we are. And I've told you to release that. So today's session might sound like it contradicts what I've said before, but it doesn't. What I've asked you to do is to be humble, to lay out all your faults before God, and to release the fake self that you have made up, that you have come to embrace. And now I'm going to talk today about how you embrace the you that you were from the beginning. When God created you, and it talks about it in Jeremiah, how he knew you before you were created in your mother's womb. That's the you that you're going to need to embrace. I'm going to tell you a little bit about why this topic is so important to me. One of the things that I know for sure is that when I talk about somebody else's fault, it's usually something I'm struggling about myself. Okay, so I'm going to explain that. One of the things that I have been doing recently is talking about Tyler Perry movies. And if Tyler Perry, if you're ever watching this, I'm a huge fan. You're such a humble man. I think you do great work. But I had gotten into the notion of talking about your movie, so please don't take this personally. It's going to make sense in a moment. So anyway, I had gotten into this whole thing about Tyler Perry's movies. Don't really go deep enough for me. I just think they're not deep enough. They're too shallow. They are too happy-go-lucky. They're too da-da-da-da, whatever it is. Anytime anybody would listen, I got onto my soapbox about his movies. The last couple of times I've talked about his movies, I felt convicted about it, which is the weirdest thing. The minute I would go to open my mouth about a Tyler Perry movie, I would just feel so convicted by the Holy Spirit. And I don't like having that feeling, so I had to really pray and say, what is it about these movies that I want to harp so much about? And what I realized as I thought about what I was saying about his movies was that one of the complaints I had about his movies is they didn't go deep enough. And then I started to realize about myself is that I have a challenge with going deeper a lot of times. I'm not that comfortable with really extreme emotions. So I'm content to be happy, but I'm not really comfortable with other type of extreme emotions. Like, for example, I'm not really all that comfortable with a whole lot of crying. I'm a crybaby, so that's probably going to sound weird, but if I'm even doing a whole lot of crying, I'm not that comfortable with that. If people get very angry, not that comfortable with that. So I realized that what I was saying about Tyler Perry movies not being deep enough, it really was more about me than it was about him. Let me tell you a little bit of my background. This is all going to make more sense, I hope, in a moment. When I was a child, I was the biggest crybaby. I mean, it was ridiculous how much I cried. I even cried for reasons that I didn't even know. My mother would often ask me, what are you crying about? I have no clue. I don't know what I'm crying about. I could watch TV and see one of those commercials about children being hungry. I would cry. I could see a TV show about somebody being loving towards another person. I would cry. I could just be sitting on my couch and I would cry. I mean, it was ridiculous. And I'm going to show you this picture of me. I hope you can see it. It's a very old picture, but I'm the one in the middle, and that's me as a little girl. Probably was about 5 or 6. My cousin Sonia, who's like a sister to me, we grew up with her. She's on the left of me, and my brother Phil is on the right of me. They certainly are probably going to be pretty mad at me when they find out I put this on the internet, but I just need to show you me, and they were kind of in the picture, and I didn't want to cut the picture out. But anyway, that was me. That was the little girl. And when I look at the picture, I start to remember who I was, and I realize now, unless I embrace her, the her that was a crybaby and wanted to save the world and wanted to make everything right, and I would ask my mom to adopt kids. She already had 8, and be like, Mom, couldn't you adopt that kid too? You know, we could do that. Can't we feed kids every day? Can't we? That little girl. That little girl, I realized I'm not going to be who I am and live up to my full potential unless I embrace her. And I knew I had not been embracing her for some time, because even when I would cry out in public, you know, at church or with other people at a movie, the first thing I would do when I would start to cry is to start to laugh, get tissue, and apologize. You know, I would do one of these, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry, I'm crying, and I'm smiling. That makes no sense. But it's because I had become so uncomfortable with who I was. And the reason I had become so uncomfortable is because people would question me about it. Why do you cry so much? That's ridiculous. Stop crying. Stop being like that. So I became a fake self. I became a self who couldn't cry, who couldn't show all of my emotions, who couldn't, all of that stuff. And recently, when I realized I had disconnected myself from her, I decided I'm just going to be connected with her again. And I don't care what people think. I'm going to cry if I want to cry, and I'm going to just do whatever I want to do. So ironically, I just recently saw Tyler Perry's movie for Color Girls. Fantastic job, Tyler Perry, because I, again, believe one day you will see this. So I want to say what a fantastic job you did on that. And you know, when I watched that movie, I cried when I wanted to cry. I didn't care. I sniffled. I blew my nose. I wiped my eyes because I didn't care, and I didn't apologize to anyone for crying. I went to an event a couple of weeks ago for an organization called the Capitol Hill Crisis Pregnancy Center in Washington, D.C. Wonderful organization. If you're looking for an organization to donate to, they are the ones. The Capitol Hill Crisis Pregnancy Center in Washington, D.C. Fantastic organization. The director is Janet Durek. Went to their annual gala. One of the volunteers got up to speak about her time that she's had with one of the young ladies there. I just cried my little head off, didn't care, didn't look at people and say I'm sorry. That's who I am. And I realized, because now I'm embracing that little Celeste who cried so much, that I'm starting to be just who I am. I'm starting to be more compassionate and starting to understand people more, starting to allow people to be just who they are in their process too, not being judgmental and critical, but allowing people to be just where they are in their process. And I believe you will be able to do the same. So what I want you to do, this is your assignment. I want you to go back, take a picture, just like I did. Look at that person that you are, because that person is still inside you. That little girl, little boy that you were is still inside of you. And I just want you to sit with that picture, stare at it, look at it. Start to remember who you are. And sometimes in our lives, because we've been through so much trauma, you can't even remember that person. Or sometimes it's even difficult to look at those old pictures. But you know what? Just have the courage to go back and look, because that's the you were from the beginning. And now I'm going to be able to take this little girl, this little Celeste, take her into the world with all that I know now and all the power that I have in me now because of the Holy Spirit. And we together, with God, of course, with the Holy Spirit and with Jesus' blessing, going to change the world. I'm so excited about what we're going to do. And I'm also excited about what you're going to do when you embrace the real you. Be encouraged. Take care. And I would love to hear from you. Post your comments. Forward this blog to other people. And I'm going to come back again with the probably last part of rediscovering you very soon. Take care.